If your goal is to use podcasting as a way to generate sales and leads for your health or wellness business, you're in the right place because that's all we talk about here. But today's guest has told me her podcast is now a major part of her business model and income, so she is living the dream. Zora Benhamou hosts the Hack My Age podcast, which helps empower women navigating the menopausal transition through biohacking techniques and information from forward-thinking experts. In this episode, you'll learn how she has handled the responsibility of being a trusted voice in the health and wellness space when people are looking to you for advice, the importance of building a community around your brand, and how Zora makes sure that the guests she brings on are delivering value to her audience. I'm Joel Oliver, and this is Profits Through Podcasting. Zora, welcome in.
Thank you.
Let's start with a brief history of your business, just so we have a framework and understanding of what your business is. So it's Hack My Age, but when and why did you start it?
I started it in about 2017, more or less, with a website, basically selling my time consulting as a health coach. And I was interested always in health and wellness, and I was helping women and men as well, mostly just lose weight. They wanted better body composition. But I realized quickly that it was hard to accommodate everybody because you give them an hour of time, but then there's so much stuff in the back end to prepare and help these people. And then it's a constant, sucks your time out. So in the end, I realized, okay, let's see if we can build some programs through that on the website. That helped because then I was able to increase my prices and then still have a very low price point for people who just didn't want all my attention. And then eventually I started the podcast in 2020. And then I was in the biohacking space for women. As I'm a woman, I'm 54. And at the time I was about 50. And I said, okay, let's focus on females. And then I quickly switched over to the menopause space because my audience was asking for more menopause information. And the podcast is interesting. It really takes time to grow. So it was a side thing that I was doing in addition to try to pay the bills with other things. And still consulting and still trying to sell programs and still doing all these things. But I really enjoy talking to people. And it was an easy thing for me to build into my business. And so yeah, we've been sort of in the menopause space just, soon after I started the podcast.
And the podcast is also called Hack My Age. You're up to over 250 episodes at this point, which is a great accomplishment. And a couple other things I want to touch on too, just so we know everything that you've done. You've also authored a couple of books, right?
Yes, that was part of the selling campaign. So I did all digital books because at the time I wasn't sure how to self-publish, although I could probably easily do that right now. It did take a lot of time to put those books together. So I have a comprehensive guide and how to hack your age. And then I have a separate cookbook if people wanted to have just one or then the other. But yeah, that was an easy thing to throw on the website. It's digital. I'm a digital nomad pretty much. So for a long time. And so it sort of fit into the business model.
When you had the idea, say, to write those books, was it born out of a desire from your audience as well? Like you mentioned, you went into the menopause space because of demand. Was that similar with the books, or you just thought I should do this?
No, that didn't come out from demand. It was an idea. It was part of the program to buy this. They had different packages. You could buy the book, or you could buy the book with my consultation. You could buy just the cookbook if you want to know how to. So I wanted to give different price points, but in the end, it was hard to sell because I didn't have very much of a presence online. I didn't have a podcast when I started it. I didn't have much of a presence on social media. So that didn't go as well as I thought it would.
Okay. Well, we live and learn, right? That's what entrepreneurship is all about. And before we move on to, I think there's one last thing, maybe there's more, but I think at least one, the actual community that you've built within your business, the biohacking menopause. Could you talk a bit about what that is? So
the community is another way to get residual income. And this was recommended to me because, again, you want to help people and you want to get in touch with them. And then you build this Facebook group, which that was also part of my business and still is, an Instagram group. And then you get bigger and bigger. And then you want to give time, but you just can't. Or you are limited, at least in my space, limited by what you can say, what you can do by Meta. For example, if I talked about vaginal health, it was like I suddenly got blocked and restricted because I use the word vagina, or it's like, but this is about your health. And so I got very frustrated with it, and it's still there. I just know I have to be careful with things I say and the things that I post. But when you have a community, you're free. You're free to say what you want and do what you want, and your community wants that information. And then the community is, you have more or less certain amount of money coming in each month, because you start like with a base, your first fans in the beginning, and then you just keep growing and expanding it. And the goal is to try to get more and more, because what you do is you get women together, or at least in my case, women, but men or women, and then you're able to give information, give webinars. We have live Q&As. You can have giveaways. You can have them motivated. It's, again, a community very similar to like you'd have on Facebook or any other area. People can comment and share and posts, and we use Zoom to meet up. And it's very satisfying. I really enjoy my community and the women that I attract, because they all tend to be like-minded. And then you have that freedom, and then just knowing that, okay, I'll just have to keep building this community. And then knowing that every month I have X amount, and then if you keep growing it, there's nothing more that you need to do. You just need to get more people. You don't have to do more work, because the work is pretty much the same.
Yeah, there's a lot of value in a community like that, because there are many people out there, whatever their issue is or whatever they're working on or whoever they want to connect with, could be a struggle. How do I connect with these people who are out there in the world? So then you have people like yourself who are putting your vibe out into the world and attracting back people who are similar to you. And then you put those people all in a group, and you've given them tremendous value just with that alone, and the friendships and connections that they can make within a group like that. So
another thing that would be useful for anyone who is doing podcasting and wants to build a community. And by the way, my community isn't so big that I don't have the issues. So I think if you do, once you do grow, you probably need to get or hire managers for the community, because then you do want to make sure everybody is really good in there. But one thing that's really great as a podcast host, at least in my situation, is that I invite all the guests to speak to my community, like a free live Q&A. It's a bonus for them, because they tap into a really well curated community and targeted audience. And so if they're selling a book or a product or a program, or just want to reach more women to share their information, it's really a wonderful space for them. And it, again, gives me content that I don't need to really work on. I just have to moderate, get the guests to come in and they talk. And it's great to see the interaction, and the community appreciates it, because my guests, if you were to hire them as a doctor, they would cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for their time. Of course, it's not a one-on-one consult, but it's really valuable for these people to be able to ask their own questions. So what I do is with the community, I tell them, listen to the podcast first, if you can, so that at least you're tuned in, you're dialed into this technique or therapy or book or whatever it is that they're talking about. And then you don't waste our time answering questions that I asked in the podcast. So that way they are up to speed. And then once you listen, how many times you've listened to a podcast and said, oh, I still have questions, right? I want to get in there. So I think a community for any podcast host who has guests, at least regular guests, is a nice little bonus to have.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because not only are you giving more value to your community, but like you said, the guests that you're having on, that's more value for them as well, and a bigger incentive for them to come and make that appearance on your show, because then you're getting that extra exposure to your audience through the community. So you've touched on a few reasons here already, or benefits of having the podcast. Like you said, you can put that info out there and not have to repeat it, and it's a starting point for your audience. When you think back to when you first started the podcast, do you remember any of the reasons or goals at that point? Like, what were you hoping it would accomplish for you by starting that podcast?
I didn't think of it too much, because one, I didn't know anything really how to make a podcast, and podcasting wasn't such a big deal as it is right now. And I didn't have the pressure. I still had my business. And so I didn't have the pressures like, oh, I got to monetize this podcast right now. And in the beginning, you're getting used to, how do I ask questions? How do I make it intriguing? So you start with people and friends and interview people, which just kind of doesn't matter. And it gives you your training wheels, and you sort of practice. It gives you content. I think I was doing 3 recordings more or less per week, 3 or 4. Sometimes, a bit more and it was purely out of interest. It wasn't because I got to grow this podcast and it has to start monetizing. It didn't have that pressure at the time. It was an add-on to my business, but now it's becoming the bread and butter of the business, because then you can sell advertising space. You can have sponsored episodes. When you have the audience, you have this platform. And so they didn't have this grand plan. In fact, I started it thinking, let's just see where it goes. If I lose interest, I'm just going to let it go. And I didn't lose interest, and I kept going. And obviously it was people wanted to hear more. And then when you got into the menopause space, it's like there was so little information. So I had reached a real good niche. There was not enough information out there. So I was one of the few sharing the information. And that's a bonus, because then you grow much more quickly. So that was very helpful.
When you started that, did you have much of a following at that point? Because you had the business for a while before the podcast. How did that look in terms of your audience or community size at that point before you started it?
Well, before I started, I had a decent community, but it was a matter of how do you monetize them is always the question. How do you convert them into paying customers of what, right? And all I had was affiliations. Maybe I'd talk about a product or something, or my own products, right? My own books or my own programs. But it wasn't so big, and it's still not so big. I'm working on it now. I mean, it's all relative. Some people are like, oh, you're so big. And then I look at other people much bigger than me going, wait, I have a lot of room to grow here. So I think I had enough to just scrape by, but I still was in the red in terms of, I would call it investing in my business. Then the podcast, it kept growing and growing. And I saw that there was a demand. So it motivates you to keep going. And then when you get messages, you hear from people sending you emails, or they comment on YouTube because you posted the video there, or emails. They appreciate it and they want it. It is motivating. Oh, okay, I really need to keep going, even if it's just one or two, because sometimes you feel really alone when you're podcasting. Who's listening out there? You appreciate the feedback when it comes. So I would say no, it wasn't, it wasn't like I had this huge following and that helped me, convert those people into listeners. Not at all.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that motivation aspect, because that's a good thing to touch on, because if you look at the stats, so many people that start the podcast, they just stop. And that's a big reason why, is even maybe a few months in, they're just thinking there's no one really listening here. I don't know if it's worth it. And if you're able to move past that point and stay with it, you can get the types of results that you're talking about here now. Did you have those moments at all? Because you said right off the bat, you were pretty interested in all these conversations, but did you have any moment where you felt like I might just quit this, or I'm too busy, or it's not working, or was it all good all the time?
For me, it was pretty good. I could talk about menopause all the time. It's my interest. I'm passionate about it. If I just sat there under the microphone by myself, I'd still be talking about it. And there is so much to learn. So I think when you are choosing a topic or a podcast niche, it's got to be something you are happy to talk about it every single day with anybody, and that you'll never run out of content. Science always evolves, or menopause, information continually evolves. There's always controversy and debate. And so I would have one guest say HRT is good or hormone therapy is good. The other one says it's bad. And so then the people who are listening, like, oh my God, so what do we do? Because I like to bring, I don't have an agenda really. I just like to bring both sides of the story of people. Maybe they don't agree. And sometimes I do roundtables and I'm like, okay, like we're all confused now. So now we're going to put you guys in the same room because I'm not the doctor here, but you guys can duke it out. So that's also another fun thing to do with the podcast. But I have to say, no, one, because it wasn't like I have to make money today on the podcast. And two, is a passion of mine. So I could talk about it all the time. And I am a nomad. So it was easy. As long as I had a microphone and Wi-Fi, I can do this anywhere. I didn't need to have the perfect mic. I didn't have a mic in the beginning. I didn't have a lamp. I didn't have anything. I would love to have a podcast studio and look all professional, but I don't. But that hasn't stopped me. And maybe one day I will have to take it next level, but you go things bit by bit and then you add on to it, because unless you have a ton of money and you can go straight to the chase. But if you don't, then you'll get your mic one day, or you get your lights and you'll get your headphones and you'll get the things that you need and upgrade your computer. And I would say for me, it was like that. It was bit by bit. I just kept adding on, and I learned from other podcast hosts and said, what are you doing? What mic are you using? Or what headphones are you using? And where can I get better sound quality? And now I'm thinking, should I move from Zoom into Riverside? It's like a house. You never stop. Just keep building on it.
Yes, it's always good to improve and have a minimum level of quality as well. But I would say there's some things that once you get to a certain point, it's not really going to help that much more. Like your audio quality, for example, right now is perfectly acceptable. If you were to go spend $5,000 on a mic, it's not going to make any difference. There's so many other things you could think about. Something that you mentioned is the idea of varying viewpoints. So you don't have a single side or a bias. You're just there to try to learn and get even differing viewpoints on. And then you mentioned the roundtables to try to sort those thoughts out. Let's talk about that a bit. How does it feel for you as your audience has grown and come to see you as an authority and look to you for advice? Because if they're hearing, let's call it conflicting info from the same podcast even, then I assume they're looking to you to say, hey, help us sort this out. And what's the right answer here? How has that affected you over the years? Like being this person that they come to and trust, do you feel a responsibility there in terms of how you put things out there? What does that look like?
Yeah, you do feel the weight as you grow bigger and you know people are listening and they send you information and you feel a responsibility for sure. My whole jam is to help women navigate all the confusion because they will hear one thing from me, another one from my guests, another one from their doctor, and another one from their girlfriend. And they're like, what do I do? So I'm here to help them navigate and to say, don't listen to me. Right. So that's my position is there's going to get all this thing. You have to listen to you. And I teach them how to dial into their own intuition and figure things out themselves. That's what biohacking is all about, because I'm all about biohacking menopause. That means you're doing your own self-experimentation and you advocate for yourself and you keep learning, whether, through a podcast or a book or whatever. But we do have these opportunities to give our opinion through one podcast intro. Because sometimes when I may not fully agree or I may have my opinion on it that I feel a bit stronger, in the intro, I can say, look, this person's going to say this. And I personally think, you need to do that. You do what you want, but I get a chance to do that in the intro. And the other thing that's very powerful, and I think for anybody who needs to show that they're an authority in whatever it is that they're doing, is that you have solo episodes. And solo episodes gives a person a chance to hear what you think. How am I going to sort through this information? Or I really like Zora's guests. They may say different things, but I want to know what does she do and how does she navigate this and what is her opinion on that? So you have your solo episodes. And when I was starting to work with podcast agents who now sell space and advertising, I was told you need to really start doing more solo episodes that shows your authority, at least what you know, or people say it's a bunch of BS, she does nothing, whatever it is, they want to decide, but they get a chance to listen to you and what you think. And then it also increases your podcast listening rate, the downloads, because you have two chances to download. So I noticed my downloads increased when I added a second episode per week.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's great to know. Great strategy as well to do those solo episodes because people do want to hear from you. And like you're saying, that's part of why you're there is there's too much information. I don't know what to decide, but what does Zora think? Because I trust her, right? With great power comes great responsibility. So anyone in this space, specifically health and wellness, they're trying to grow that audience, but there does come that responsibility with it. So let's talk a bit more business. We know that the podcast has become a pretty big part of your marketing funnel and getting new leads. Is that your biggest source of leads right now, or are they coming from other places? Tell us a bit about what you even know about where your new leads are coming from. For now, maybe they're following you on Instagram or they're finding the podcast, just anyone that comes into your world, let's say, for the first time.
I would say the best conversion is from your podcast episodes that you are maybe talking about some product. But for me, when we make a partnership with a product, and we're very careful about, at least I am, and our team is how we curate, because people have trust. I don't ever want to lose that trust. You don't just make a deal and a partnership with anyone who's ready to throw money at you. And I know there are podcasters that do, but I don't. If you've been listening to a podcast host for a while, you either trust them or you don't trust them. And I have to say my audience is very vulnerable. A woman going through menopause is feeling really bad, very high pain points. So you can sell her anything. And I don't ever want to abuse that. And so I'm very careful about what I choose to share. Okay.
So yes, in addition to having your funnel where people can come and eventually be a customer of yours with your own products and programs, you are getting sponsorship type money for your episodes as well, whether it's an appearance or products, that sort of thing.
Yeah, if it's my own product, which I have very few of my own, and these are digital products. I don't have supplement or that other. Well, there are plenty of podcast hosts who do wind up creating their own supplement or their own products, and that's their opportunity. They can sell at every time. In the mid roll of the podcast, if it's empty and no one's paid for that space, I put my own product, which would be usually the membership program. And so I kind of slip in saying, hey, if you listen so far, do you like our guest? Would you like to meet our guest live in person on a Q&A? Well, then join the biohacking membership, menopause membership group. And it's a chance for me to advertise and sell my own thing. And it's recommended to do it under 40 seconds because by the time the person realizes an advertisement, then they don't have a time to leave or stop or fast forward. It's, right. One of the techniques is try to get it short. It's not easy, especially if you're have a lot to say about certain thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where are you meeting your guests mostly anyway? Obviously, some of them are coming through those official channels to do a sponsorship, but are you still organically meeting people or taking pitches? What is that like for you these days?
Yeah. Most of my guests are either I curate them, I go after them and I say, I really want this person on my podcast. So usually that's where I like it to be because I want most of my information to be from really great guests. Then there are podcast exchanges. So to grow my podcast, I need to get on other people's podcasts and they know that too. So we will do a podcast exchange and you have to filter those people, make sure that they have good information and that you agree with what they're saying. Cause it's just because you're on their podcast, so their podcast may be two people listening, you don't really know. So you can go and look through and how many episodes they've had and try to see where they're at, if it's worth your time or not worth your time. And the rest are pitches. Yeah, I get pitches all the time. And so most of them are no's, but once in a while you see somebody be quite interesting. And if you can get a podcast exchange out of it, great. If not, maybe you can ask for their mailing list. How can you share this episode? Because I have a team, I have editors, I have VAs, I have to pay for every episode and it's not cheap. And then guests want to come on for free. Well, they better be really, really good. So you need to curate your guests. And I think people who listen don't realize the cost that goes into creating a podcast. So then if somebody pitches me a guest, and then what I do is a screening call. It's like, it looks interesting. Let's kind of see if we are a match, because I've had times where I thought we were matches and then they say something and I'm like, oh, I don't know if they deserve to be on my platform for free, especially. It's rare that happens, but you have control. You can do whatever you want. You can decide if you want to publish something or not. I would usually sit and reflect before I won't follow my instinct. I don't like what they said. I go, you know what? It doesn't really matter. Just because I don't like what they said, it's okay. Maybe it will resonate with somebody else. And I still have a chance to, in my intro, to say what I think.
Right.
But it depends, how much you want to control. But I really try to be neutral. I really try to give people a chance to say both sides. And people generally know after a while, they know my opinion on things. And it's not my opinion they have to listen to. It's what's good for them. And what's good for me may not be good for them. But so then the remaining will be some pitches and sometimes I'll take those.
Okay. Specifically when it comes to the outreach that you mentioned and identifying people you'd like to be on the show and making that happen, how are you going about that? Because I know a lot of people struggle these days, maybe not at your level, but we just hear a lot about it. Like the pitches are falling on deaf ears. They're just deleting every pitch that comes in, or Instagram puts it into the other inbox. They never see it. How do you go about that? Is it like relationship building or is it a single message?
Oh, actually, the best way is through relationships. If you can, I just did this yesterday. I had a friend who's a podcast host and she had a big guest on. And I'm like, God, I've been trying to get that guest and my emails are going to deaf ears. Mm-hmm. She made a connecting email to me. And then I will do the same. I was like, okay, who do you want on my list? Like, yep. I can help you. And at least make that introduction, because that person who's already spoken to you you have a little bit of trust. And I wouldn't recommend any Joe Schmo. And so if I think it's a good fit, then you make that introductory email. So those are really, really important. But in terms of the pitches, I do delete a lot. I try to, at least most times, say not interested or come back later, or I don't know. But I would say the ones that capture my attention are the ones that are very short that have a media kit included. So if I wanted to find out more about the guest, I just click on the button or the link. I think media kits are good because it just kind of gives you a whole rundown and then you have all the information there. There was one time somebody made a pitch to me and it really worked. And it was, he made a very short video. Hey, Zora. And he had a sign saying, hey, Zora, with my name on it. It built so much curiosity. I got an appointment with him. Making it a little bit personal is important, but I think everybody's now really dialed into, hey, Zora, I listened to your episode with Dr. Joe Schmo and I really liked it. And so I think my guest would be good. That doesn't work anymore. We all know that's sort of very scripted, but I think something very short and with the media kit is good enough.
Yes, that opening line. I am truly impressed by the work that you're doing. Like everyone is on to that now. Everyone is sending the same emails. I don't know if it's AI or not, but yeah, just anything like that, we just pick up on. One thing that I just wanted to highlight there that you mentioned that I think is a great idea is that media kit. So this is the perspective of you reviewing pitches. Because I get some of these too where they're just telling me a name of someone. It's not even this person. It's like someone on their behalf is saying, Zora would be a great fit for your podcast, but there's no link, no website. I just don't know who this person is. How do you expect me to accept that pitch? Who are you?
Yeah, we need to investigate a little bit and see who that person is. Or you can feel if they have interesting information or would be a good match. You may go, oh, wow, I've never done a podcast on menopause. Okay. And they'll see, oh, it's biohacking menopause, or I've done menopause before. But if they go in, they may find something in there about you that's unique that they haven't done yet on their episode. But yeah, definitely have links and media kits.
Mm-hmm. The final thing I'd like to ask you, because we are talking to a lot of newer entrepreneurs who are trying to get their businesses up and running to, say, the size of something like you have. It can look great on here. We have a big podcast. You have a successful business, but there are always challenges, or at the very least, priorities that we're working on as entrepreneurs. What would you say for 2025 is a big one that you are working on? It doesn't have to be a challenge necessarily, but something in your business.
Oh, well, actually, I just have jumped into a business accelerator program for social media. My one goal is really to get more people to listen to the podcast. You got to get more downloads, because for me, if I have an agent helping me work with me, then I can grow. They can charge more, and everybody makes more when you have a bigger audience. So one is get that. But I also am working on social media because I can use that as well to funnel into the podcast listenership, and as well as eventually also sell more, whatever X, Y, and Z, and charge more for whatever it is. So I think building your audience is really, really important. I think for me, I'm playing around with different platforms, but I think Instagram will be my power there, and to help, and it's not only to help women, help me, but also help women get information about menopause out there and get it into a digestible format, because there's a whole strategy to doing this, and me just posting as it is not working. I mean, you grow, but it's very, very, very slow. So understanding the strategy and how to create viral videos is really, really important. And at least for me right now, I'm dedicating my next 6 months to see if I can really push it, and then also get better with the content, because we also create reels from our interviews, and I want to get that better as well, and make sure that we get good clips, and that we're able to format in a way that's digestible and interesting, so that people go, oh, okay, eventually I want to go to listen to the episode. And that's what we always do with every episode that we post a reel on. We have a ManyChat automated service that will say, okay, if you want to hear the whole episode, not just this one clip, then comment XYZ. So that helps with building the engagement on the reel, but it also brings people to listen to the podcast, and who perhaps have never even knew you even had a podcast, because they just sort of found you on Instagram.
Okay, very interesting idea. And something people can take and implement right now. If you're saying that it improves your engagements, that's great. And an important note there too, to think about how everything is always relative. Like your idea of not working is, I think you have 35,000 followers or something like that on Instagram. So for so many people, they would think, I would love to have that many followers, but yeah, there's always room to grow. So it's good to hear. And yeah, you're not just accepting I'm done growing. Like there's always room for improvement, let's say.
Yeah. And there's actually, it's not so much about the numbers. Okay. It would be great to have 100,000, but if they're not engaged, it doesn't mean anything. So when you want to say jump, they jump, and you better off having 1,000 followers who jump than 35,000 and like nobody's reacting. So don't underestimate the power of small creators. If these are real good people, organically grown, who like what you have to say, who trust you, and they're engaged and they're commenting and they're sharing, the biggest thing that you want in social media is people to share. Okay, that you want more eyeballs on that. And when you share, you don't even need that many comments. Eventually they will say. So don't look at people's numbers and don't look at the number of likes and don't look at the number of comments. You want to see really the engagement and how many views have been seen in that reel or that video. So don't underestimate if you start out small, and there's always room to grow.
Mm-hmm. Excellent insight. We'll leave it there. You've been very, very helpful. I know there's going to be a lot of takeaways from this episode for our audience to go and implement in their businesses. So thank you so much, Zora. And we'll have your links for Hack My Age in the show notes so people can come and take a look at everything you're offering.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Join us again next time on Profits Through Podcasting for more insights on how to turn your health-focused podcast into a lead and revenue generation machine for your business. Are you ready to let a team of professionals handle your entire podcast production workflow? East Coast Studio can help you elevate your podcast to the higher quality standards required for credibility in the health and wellness space. Plus, give you the guidance and support needed to podcast consistently, growing your impact and your sales. Visit eastcoaststudio.com to learn more.